2 wins on the spin and 2 clean sheets for Manchester United heading into this game against Crystal Palace at the weekend. Now, we had a really convincing win over Palace in midweek in the League Cup, but let's be honest, the Premier League is where it matters. Palace will have a slightly stronger team. United will probably have a slightly stronger team. There will be changes, but what changes? What I'm going to run through in this video is, honestly, for the first time this season, I think Erik ten Hag has a bit of a, I wouldn't call it a dilemma. I suppose you could call it a dilemma. He's actually got choices in positions. And that's, I swear, that's the first time I've been able to say that this season. So you let me know what you think in the comments. What's your prediction for the game? What's your starting 11 for the game? I'll run through mine now and explain my reasoning. And if you can, drop a like in the video. It makes a big difference. But yeah, that first point there. For the first time this season, it honestly feels like Erik ten Hag could potentially put a couple of players in certain positions. And you can understand the logic. Prior to that, it's just been injuries galore and basically who can play rather than who should play. Now, there's a couple of injuries going into this game that could potentially change this starting 11. And I think we'll find out about them from, we might not actually. Ten Hag might keep it close to his chest. But Sergio Reguilon, he played the Burnley game when he was ill and then he missed the Crystal Palace game. He could return. Christian Eriksen, we don't know, and Scott McTominay, you don't know. But I'll be totally honest, neither of them would be starting if they are fit anyway. In terms of the longer-term absentees, you've got Luke Shaw, you've got Tyrone Malacia, and you've got Wan-Bissaka. None of them will be playing, but a good thing there about Kobbie Mainoo coming back after the international break, that will be big. And Dangore's just come through. Then you've got Medjbri coming through. Then you've got Mainoo coming through. The midfield really is getting bolstered by the academy in a good way. But you know what this game could be? And this is mad, really. This could be the first time this season that all of Manchester United's summer signings start. That's how bad our injury problems have been. That's what Erik ten Hag has had to contend with. What I'm going to do here is head down to what our team was against Crystal Palace. It was a strong game. It really was a strong game. And there's a couple of players in there that you think, well, they definitely got to start. But then how do you get those in when you're making... It's what I mean. It's a genuine dilemma. Now, in terms of the defence, right? Let's just leave the absolute guarantees. I don't think Amrabat's guaranteed to start there. I'll run through all of this, I promise. Delô is guaranteed to start there. Varane's not is guaranteed to start there, but Maguire's not guaranteed to start there. Who do you think should be starting at left centre-back for Manchester United against Palace at the weekend? Because I'll be honest, Maguire put in a very decent performance against Palace. Lindelof has been preferred as the understudy. But even then, you had Johnny Evans who played well against Burnley. Martinez, we don't know whether he missed the last game. We don't know whether he's going to be fully fit or not. Martinez hasn't quite been there this season. I'm torn on this one. I really am, because I thought Maguire actually played pretty well. I think it's likely to be Lindelof coming in. But it actually wouldn't surprise me if Harry Maguire does make his first Premier League start for United. It really wouldn't. In terms of left back, right? This kind of changes most things, really. Is Sergio Reguilon going to be fit? Because if he's fit, he comes in at left back. But if he isn't fit, I think you know what's going to happen, right? And you might not be happy about it, but I think it's likely to happen again that we see Amrabat coming in to cover at left back for Manchester United. He played that position so well for United against Palace at the weekend. And it's because of this, right? It's quite simple. On paper, it looks like, oh, wow, you've got a defensive midfielder playing out left back. But as soon as United had the ball and we were going up the pitch, Casemiro, say Casemiro goes further up. Just say the team moves further up the pitch here. Then what United did was, say Diogo Dalot went over there. You saw Varane split, Lindelof split, and Amrabat kind of dropped into this position quite a lot of the time. So United, it's kind of typical United this season. It's our shape. We play, when we got in possession going forward, it's a 3-1-6. Amrabat dropped in between and kind of operated as a central defensive midfielder. And if the ball was coming back towards us, he'd shift back to his position. United's 2 centre-backs would tighten up and Amrabat would just go back into position. It's quite a subtle thing to do, but you need a tactical understanding of the game to be able to do it. So I think Amrabat playing there, it wouldn't surprise me to see him. In fact, I would probably say it's likely. My guess is that Amrabat does start there again and the Reguilon is given a little bit more rest. Why risk bringing Reguilon back when he's not fit if you've got an option there in Amrabat? And, of course, Amrabat being there, it kind of unleashed, if you want to call it. I don't know what the turn of a better phrase, but Casemiro, best performance of the season so far. He just had less defensive responsibility. He didn't have to think about tracking back. He didn't have to think about running back. He could just focus on the balls up front, where the runners are, getting a goal. Fantastic from Casemiro. And again, you might look at this formation and go, well, hold up here, because all of a sudden, Casemiro is isolated in this position. But not when Amrabat is drifting in to cover the space and help. As I said, we'll do it again. We'll do this. Do that again. Casemiro isn't isolated at all because he's always got Amrabat here. It kind of operates a little bit like that sometimes. It's just Amrabat impressed me so much from that left-back position. I really wouldn't be surprised to see him play there. And I really wouldn't be surprised to see Casemiro line up as the sole defensive midfielder on paper, because that's not how it would work in the game. But you know, one midfielder I think absolutely has to start this game. It's Hannibal. I think Hannibal has got to be a shoo-in for this game. Of course, there is a player here who is not in the starting 11, who absolutely is a shoo-in. I'll take Mason Mount out for the time being. We'll have a little conversation around him. Bruno Fernandes, of course, comes back in. Now, I think that is going to be the midfield again. Was that the midfield that started away at Burnley? I think it was. Hannibal has earned this. Hannibal has earned this. Ran more than any player against Burnley. More than any United player had ran in a single game since 2019. It's such a fantastic stat for him. Most pressures, most sprinting pressures. He's adding the energy into midfield that the United team has just lacked ridiculously. And he's young enough and fit enough that he'll be raring to go here. And I personally think that he's earned that position in that midfield. Bruno is an absolute given. Bruno comes back into this team. Of course, then, the question remains, what happens with Mason Mount? And this is where I think it gets curious with the starting 11 and why it's difficult to predict. Let's go up here. Let's get this in. Because Mason Mount, I think the fact that he was taken off at halftime is probably indicative of his fitness right now, but also indicative that Erik Ten Hag probably had an eye on using him at the weekend. I think that's fair. But where does Mason Mount play in this team? And this is the question, right? Because I think there is a possibility that we see this. Then there's a possibility we see Mason Mount start out on the right wing for Manchester United. And it shouldn't really be too much of a surprise to anybody to hear that concept. Mason Mount has played there plenty of times for Chelsea. He is an effective player there. It's not just putting Mason Mount in for the sake of putting Mason Mount in. Pellistri had all the energy, he had all the drive. I thought he was very proactive and actually quite impressive against Crystal Palace in midweek. What he did lack was the final product, which you can understand in a player of his age and with his experience. Nobody can question his attitude, but the final product wasn't quite there. I think we could see Mason Mount come in not just for that final product, but also from a defensive perspective. Palace will be more dangerous, right? They will definitely be more dangerous against us this weekend. But I think Mason Mount kind of, well, I suppose just covering all that space there. I think Erik Ten Hag he might throw him in there. He might put him at right wing, and it's certainly, because the last thing I want to see is this, right? Ever again. Mason Mount centrally and Bruno out on the right. Please don't do that, Erik. Ever again. Bruno needs to stay in the centre, and I think Mason Mount out on that right wing makes sense. Now, another question mark, of course, is what happened. I don't personally think it's a question mark, because I think Rashford comes back into this team. But people have been questioning Rashford's form now, as of late, which I think it's fair to question his form. I don't think it's fair a lot of the criticism that's going towards him. He is without doubt our first choice winger. Against Brighton, man, how many chances did he create? But he needs to be far more. I think it's his decision making which is letting him down the most. And that's probably a bit of a criticism I've thrown at Rashford for a lot of his career at United. Just that decision making. Like it's not all about head down and drive. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's get your head up and lift and look for the man in the box, because the man in the box on Saturday, is going to be Rasmus Højlund. And I think that is a team there that I'm predicting. I'm going for a back five of Onana with Lindelof and Varane as the two centre-backs. Amrabat operating as the left-back, extra central midfielder, whatever you want to call it. But left-back on paper. Delight right-back, a midfield trio of Casemiro, Hannibal and Bruno, and a front three of Rashford, Højlund and Mount. And I think that's a really good team. It's a slight tweak. There's a couple of variations. But as I said before, this could be the first time this season that we see all four of our major signings. starting for Manchester United in a league game. That is a good situation for Erik ten Hag to be in. In terms of predictions, right, that team there, there shouldn't be a drop-off from the energy that we saw against Palace in midweek. If we're looking at the sort of the creators of that energy, Hannibal was a big reason for it. I think Mason Mount played pretty well as well in terms of that. He can add that energy down on that right wing in the same way that Pellistri had the energy, but also maybe a little bit more creative on the deliveries for Rasmus Højlund in the middle. I think Rashford comes in at left wing. And I think this United team, I'm hoping for a complete repeat performance. You know, visualise to realise and all that. I'm going for a 3-0 win for United. I want the same thing to happen. Control the opening 20 minutes. Get a goal after 20 minutes. Force Crystal Palace to come out a little bit. Then punish them. And that team there can punish them. Then you've got Garnacho on the bench, who can make such a difference. You could argue that he might deserve to start. I personally wouldn't, but he's such an impact player from the bench. Garnacho on the bench. Martial, who's been playing well recently, he's on the bench. You've got who in midfield? Depends on Eriksen and all that. Don't know. I'd be happy. I'd be pretty happy with that team. That's my prediction. 3-0 with that start 11. You let me know yours in the comments below, as you always do. I'm giving this 2 days, this video, because I think this is, for the first time, we've got a little bit of a selection dilemma. Because there are certain players that you could play, and maybe others miss out. Curious on this one, so you can let me know what you think in the comments below. And if you can, drop a like on the video. Come on, takes like 2 seconds.